This is Greg Kelly. Donate now to Toys for Tots, which works year-round. Go to toysfortots.org. Toys for Tots supports children in need throughout the year with programs like the Toys for Tots Literacy Program. Established in 2008, it has provided over 63 million books to disadvantaged children. The Toys for Tots Literacy Program is committed to providing disadvantaged children with direct access to books and educational resources that enhance their ability to read and communicate effectively. Go to toysfortots.org.
Listen, all you New Yorkers.
Eugene, taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
And I'm Jake Novak filling in for the Rita Cosby Show, filling in for my friend Rita Cosby. And again, a little bit more than an hour from now, 11:55 Eastern Time, I'm going to share a personal story about Rita Cosby that I think the fans of this program, her longtime listeners and viewers should hear. An interesting career and something that just brings me a smile to my face every time I speak to Rita. Rita's been a great friend, one of the first people to have me on as a guest on her programs during certain news events that she knew I'd be a great person to contribute about, and I really appreciate that. Abby Phillip, the anchor woman at CNN, who continued to misrepresent until just recently the incident at Gracie Mansion, just Orwellian-type weirdness from so many people in the mainstream media, but she was the worst. She was the one who actually said that this was an attack, that that the reality, of course, was that it was an Islamist, a couple of guys pledged to ISIS, an Islamic jihadist attempted bombing of protesters against Mayor Mamdani, and she continually said that this was an attack on Mamdani and on Muslims in New York. Of course, it was the exact opposite. Forced to apologize, but she didn't apologize on the air on CNN. And she didn't, by the way, apologize on CNN.com, which is a much more popular site, gets a lot more eyeballs than the TV network, by the way. She apologized on X with very, very small audience. So that's one problem with her apology. The second part of her apology is it's a stunning admission of what really goes on behind the scenes at a number of these television networks. And I speak from experience. I was a TV news executive producer for 32 years until just recently. And yes, I worked at CNN. I worked there for 7 years. Now, I was lucky enough to work with a couple people through a decent amount of my career who were incredibly well-informed, incredibly accomplished in their lives before they were ever TV people. And I didn't have to pull teeth too much for most of my national news career. When I was working in local news, different story. Dealt with people who really didn't know which end was up. But that was my luck at these channels. There were plenty of people on the air when I was at CNN, some at Fox, some at CNBC, although not many at CNBC because at least they knew financial news. They may have been politically biased, but they were not stupid. But there were plenty of on-air people at CNN who knew very well they should not work with me. Because the one thing I wouldn't tolerate, I don't mind if you disagree with me, but if you are ill-informed about history, if you are ill-informed about basic economics, and if you are expecting to work with me on a program where you're just going to read the teleprompter, it's not going to work out. And those people learn very quickly at every channel I worked at, you don't want to work with Jake Novak. And I'm a really, really nice guy. I'm pretty silly, too. But I will not work with someone who doesn't know where the Middle East is on the map. I will not work with someone who, even 2 days after the NYPD makes it clear that this was a terrorist attack attempted on protesters and not on the mayor, still says that on the air, either because she's deliberately lying or because she really just reads what's ever in the teleprompter. And let me tell you something. I know it's hard for some of you to believe this, but someone who's a dopey anchor is actually worse than a lying anchor, because a dopey anchor will say anything her executive producer or the senior vice president of news wants her to say or him to say. And my experience with television news personalities is no matter how smart or educated they were before they got into the business or not educated before, the likelihood 9 times out of 10 is that they are ignorant. I would love to give Abby Phillip a basic history and economics test. And I'm not singling her out. I would love to give them all a basic economic and history test. They don't know what they're talking about, and that's actually more dangerous than a liar. Because if I can get you to say anything that's on the teleprompter, then there's, at least when you're lying, you've made a conscious decision. I just have someone out there who's going to say whatever they're told to say. Somebody at CNN writing up that copy, probably the executive producer, but maybe even someone higher than him or her, wanted to continue this falsehood about this crazy narrative that it was somehow an anti-Muslim bombing attack when it was done by people who were pledged to ISIS who were trying to kill New Yorkers or people who were in New York to protest. You may not like those protesters, but we know who their targets were. They were not targeting the mayor, and they were not targeting Muslims. Abby Phillip most likely didn't even know that and just read what was off the teleprompter. And then they tried to cover up her apology with something on X instead of doing it on air where it belongs. By the way, that's basic journalism ethics. If you make a mistake on one platform, you got to apologize on the same platform, which she has not done.
If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy. Download and subscribe at BeBullish.com.